All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know where you're at in the world, but what I do know is that you're here and you're here with us today. So I'm just so excited about the possibilities that we have of just communicating with each other. Again, the show is called Living Boldly with Purpose. And I'm just excited because every time I get to do one of these shows, we just have some incredible guests that, make me learn, make me realize that humanity is this wonderful place to be. I mean, we get so caught up in sometimes in comparison, or we get caught up in social media, or we caught up in figuring out how do we fit in. And so one of the things that this show really does a great job of is just showing us exactly how others are making their lives work, and they're making their lives work in big ways. And so thank you again for being part of it. Hit subscribe, notification if you want to see more of these shows, because they tend to just get better and better and gooder and all those wonderful things. And so excited about my guest today, Jeffrey. And Jeffrey is on today, and he's right now, I believe, in Southern California, where it's nice and beautiful and shiny. Here in Denver, Colorado, we have a shiny day too. And so it's kind of nice to be able to look out the window at this time of day and to be able to see things. And, one of the things I learned about Jeffrey, though, is he had to split this up. Like, he started out on the East Coast and decided to go to the West Coast. And, what a difference in the world that he lives in, where all the people are. Not saying that Orange County doesn't have a lot of people in it, because, I lived in Southern California as well. And I think between Southern California and, like the LA area and San Diego is about 23 million people. So kind of familiar with New York. But the difference is if you leave LA, you drive about 100 miles, and then it's just kind of desert. If you're going to Arizona, if you're going to Nevada, if you're going to Northern California, it starts desert or cows or something like that. If you leave New York and you start driving south for 100 miles, it's just still people. And you keep driving another 100 miles, it's still people. All the way to Florida, there's still people. And so it's so amazing that he's been able to navigate that and then be able to make a life for himself. So I've asked Jeffrey to absolutely share his story like we do all of our guests, because it's so much important to know who the person is before we get to know what they do. And so, Jeffrey, thank you for being on today. Thank you for taking the time with us. We get to talk about what it means to live boldly with purpose. And I can't wait to hear your story. The floor is yours. Like I said, you can start anywhere you want, and then we'll move on from there.
I was so excited to hear about your wonderful guests. And I'm like, oh, who could that be? I'm like, oh, it's me.
It's you, yes.
I better live up to this. I'm this wonderful guest. So I've got to bring some uniqueness and some flair to this. But it really started back about 10 years ago. I've been working as a mental health professional, working with people in my office, and I was working near the airport, and I was right where the takeoff was. And I would always tell my clients, that's the sound of low overhead. Well, little did I know, it was also the sound of black mold in the HVAC. Because what ended up happening was that I developed this sinusitis. I had this horrible headache right here, and I still have pain there, nerve pain, probably nerve entrapment. But I was sick, and it was just something odd, and I knew I needed to go to the ENT. So I go to the ENT, and he does the most normal thing in the world. He gives me prednisone, and he gives me Flonase, and he says, use a nasal rinse, use this. But I take that prednisone, and then my body changes forever and ever to this day, because my body went into chaos mode, and my feet started vibrating like I was walking on sand. My bladder hurt. My ears would turn bright red. I would have these adrenaline flushes. It felt like I had this neurological concussion. It was during Christmas time, and kind of during that time, I couldn't stand the lights on the tree, the lights. I couldn't stand someone scrolling on a screen. I couldn't stand, I couldn't remember my children's names. I couldn't remember my dog's names. Something was amiss. Go to all these doctors, neurologists, internists, ENTs, multiple ENTs. End up getting sinus surgery because my sinuses were a mess, but didn't really make much of a difference, honestly. But I go to all these doctors and basically I don't fall into their decision tree. So when you talk to a doctor, they have this idea of, well, if you say this word, it kind of leans into this category and they're going to make a decision, prognosis, diagnosis, and all the rest based on the story that you tell them. Well, I give them this weird and wacky story and they don't know what to do. And usually weird and wacky just means psychosomatic. It's in your head, my friend, just give it some time. It's just a little anxiety. Now, mind you, I'm an anxious person. Since they started kind of going around the classroom saying, you're going to read this paragraph, or we're going to go around in a circle. I've been anxious since then. And so I've always been anxious, but I knew this was an anxiety. This was something completely unique, and this was systemic. And there was something wrong. I tell everyone this is systemic. I'd go to the urologist, and it's kind of like, it's systemic. It's like, yeah, but we can just focus on the bladder. And if you want an ego death without taking any medications or ayahuasca, get your bladder scoped. It will be an ego death, I promise you. So I had it scoped and they're like, yeah, it's inflamed. So there's some idea that something's going on, but they still don't know. And they just throw out these generalities. Here, try some Flomax, try this, try that. But they don't really know. And I'm miserable. And I ended up going to a functional medicine doctor after going to the concierge doctor, after going to all these different ones, just tossing money at the problem. And he says, well, I think you have a mold issue. The blood work, and then I do the urinalysis, shows the mycotoxins. And then I hire the environmentalist, test the house, test the office. Those are the two places that I exist in. And well, there's two species of neurotoxic mold in the HVAC. Not all mold is neurotoxic, but some species are. And a lot of people can clear that mold without problems. But about 25-30% of people genetically have a hard time clearing that mold. And in that category, obviously. So I ended up with this diagnosis, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And I start these binders. The body can't pull it out. So you use these binders, you use ozone therapy, and you use a bunch of other things that are really expensive, that really don't do much of anything except for put more dollars into the pockets of these doctors.
Yeah.
And so I've tried every single supplement in the world. And I had a horrible tremor at first. Ozone therapy actually helped, with that. It actually made a difference. And red light therapy actually made a difference. But it was the binders over time that made a difference. But here's the problem. I never have any good days. I go from horrible chaos to just bad. And so I'm thinking, you know what? Let's go to the mothership. Let's go to the Mayo Clinic. It's kind of like, it'll be like a car wash of doctors. I'll just get hit with these different specialists and, maybe they're going to figure this out. Nothing is new under the sun. I'm just not talking to the right people. I'm not having the right conversations. I need to do something differently. But I'm in Orange County. We have some good health systems here. We have some good hospitals. We have Irvine and we have, UCI and we have Hoag Hospital. So, before I do that, let me go look at the directory. Let me go look at the directory for a hospital because I've seen a lot of doctors. Maybe I'm missing a specialty. And so I see toxicology. I don't know what toxicology does, but you know what? I feel toxic. I'm like, that I'm toxic. I need to go there. I need to go talk to this person. And this older gentleman, he goes, I know about that mold world. I know about those people. I know about those protocols. I know about that stuff. I don't believe any of that. I'm like, well, okay, that's fine. It's like, what do you have? And here's the thing. He listened to me. He respected me. He gave me a piece of paper to hold out in my hand like this, and he could see my tremor. He could see that something was off. He believed me, and he ran a whole bunch of blood work that I had never run before, which is one of my greatest, the doctors will run some normal blood work and go like, yeah, you're fine. Your kidneys, you're this, that's fine. but they never run all the blood work. There's always more blood work to run. So he runs something that other people don't, and that's my immunoglobulins. He does a lot of different things, and he says your immunoglobulins are really low. And immunoglobulins are coming out of your bone marrow. It's kind of like half your immune system. And so kind of important, kind of
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
And so he says, you need to go to an immunologist. Haven't been to an immunologist yet,
Hmm.
and don't even know what an immunologist is. And so
Hmm.
kind of go there, and the immunologist says, here's a vaccine. And it's kind of like, I'm going to give you this vaccine. You're going to come back in a month. We're going to do some blood work again. Come back, do the blood work. And it shows that I didn't make any antibodies to the
Anybody's
vaccine.
for it. Okay. Okay.
None whatsoever. So what does that mean? It means my immune system is all kinds of jacked up,
Yeah, it's shot.
and
It's not working.
it is shot. I call it my narcoleptic. Some people have autoimmune disorders,
Mhm.
and so the autoimmune disorder is when the immune system is attacking healthy tissue. It could be kind of like lupus, arthritis, thing. It's attacking. Mine's the opposite. Mine doesn't get out of bed. Oh, something's attacking you. Yeah, yeah, good luck with you. So be it. My immune system isn't there. And so I then get the diagnosis of common variable immune deficiency. And since that day, I have been infusing immunoglobulins. So when someone donates plasma, they pull off the plasma to make immunoglobulins to be able for people such as myself and many other people. And I have a primary immune disorder now that's dependent on immunoglobulins. Now the story continues, but at the same time, any questions about my story thus far?
Oh my gosh. I'm just, as I'm thinking, so you have to, how often do you have to go in now to get these you plasma immune globulin things that are
That's a
that's
good question. And so I start doing something that I never
mhm,
thought I'd ever be doing in my entire life. I do it at home, and I have to take these, needles, bigger needles than I would want them to be,
mhm.
and I have to stick them into the sides of my stomach. I'm not putting it into my stomach. I'm putting it into the fat,
Yeah,
the abdominal fat,
yeah.
subcutaneous immunoglobulins. And so SCIG. So some people, go to infusion centers, they get IVIG, that's intravenous, where they're putting the immunoglobulins right
In
into
the
the
vein.
vein.
Yeah.
I put mine right into the fat. And so I have to stick myself. Sometimes it doesn't hurt. Sometimes it's like warm butter. But there's other times when it does hurt, and you just deal with it. It's a familiar sting. It's a familiar pain.
Mhm.
And sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable. I wouldn't say that it ranks severely high in terms of pain for myself, but at the same time, I would prefer not to be doing it. But then it's also a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag of life. Why? Because a lot of my ancestors that had this, you know what they did? They died.
Gotcha. They died. Yeah.
They
There's
died.
nothing I could do. Yeah.
Yeah. The
So
the average life expectancy without the immunoglobulins is 48. I'm 51.
okay.
And so and so it's I'm quite thankful, but it's always nuance. Life is never so black and white, no, so binary. There is this anger towards it, and it's a
Mhm.
reminder of always having it. And it always kind of reminds me of something, when I'm talking to different people, is that grief, especially with some of these things in life, whether someone passes away, you have a medical issue, grief never gets resolved. It never gets resolved. It gets treated like a boomerang. You
Mhm.
learn how to cope with it. You learn the relationship to it, but it's going to boomerang back.
Yeah.
It's coming back, and we have to normalize, because otherwise, if you don't tell people that, if you don't let people know, when it comes back, they'll think that they did something wrong. They'll think they failed, that they came up short. Other people are doing it better than they are. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Rather than, you know what your condition is? You know what it is? You're human. You're
Mm.
human. You're having human experiences, human emotions. And we have to humanize and normalize the process of grief, because we're developing this ongoing relationship to it. So it's the complicated nature of life and illness.
Oh, cool. Well, I want to hear. I mean, I'm excited to hear the rest of the story and where it goes from. And then I have some more questions I want to ask about
Sure.
insurances and that kind of stuff when we're done. But would love to just keep going because I'm you got me on the edge of my seat right now. I got to find
All
out.
right. So
Well, and
it's
you're
kind of
alive, so I know it didn't kill you.
not yet,
So,
not yet. You know,
yeah,
death has 100% hit rate, but I'm still here. You know, I can
yeah.
walk
So
with
I
a limp,
love
but
it.
keep on walking. You know, and so the thing is that so I'm sick, you know, and I start getting a little bit better, but you know, I get shattered into a million pieces. I'm no longer the same person. I'm not the same Jeff. I'm not the same person at all. And at first, you try to go back to that same person, but you can't reach and you burn yourself out and it's just too overwhelming. And I needed to find my own voice. I needed to find me in the rubble. And it's kind of like the phoenix, you know, losing the feathers and blowing up, turning into ash and fire, and out of it comes something new. And so I don't have the words for it. I don't have the answer for it. I don't know the direction for it. And basically I have this compass in my hand. It's just spinning around and around, and it doesn't know what true north is. And so what do? I start doing something that I've never done in my entire life, ever, which is I start writing poetry. I'm not a good poet. Don't buy my poetry. You know, whatever you do, it's kind of like that's my personal journal of just me yelling into
Mhm.
the abyss, me trying to put a structure onto the chaos,
Uh-huh.
because we have this chaos and I'm lost. You know, I'm existing, but I have no structure. I have no level of organization around what's going on with me. And so I just start writing. I start expressing. I start you know, tapping into the curiosity of me, my thoughts, my
Mhm, mhm.
feelings. I put on some jazz music, no lyrics. I can't write with lyrics. It's always instrumental. And it's kind of like, and I just start writing, you know, and I start expressing. And I put out these two books, and
Yeah.
then I'm inspired to put out some journal books for fun, for giggles. I put out coloring books, and then I start putting out some of these other books. But you know, and that's just this process. You know,
Mhm.
it's this temporary kind of moment of time. There are these like short seasons of expression. And the thing that's really stuck with me for a longer period of time has been the podcast that I've created, To the
Okay.
Bone Conversations on Pain, Illness, and Meaning. And I express, and it's they're all solo episodes, and it's basically me talking to myself. It's me asking myself questions. It's
Mhm.
me exploring myself. It's a conversation of me. It's a verbal journal to myself that I just really kind of
Yeah.
share with other people as I continue that search for the structure that makes sense. And I've always liked, you know, the Ram Dass quote, which is, "We're all just walking people home at the end of the day." And
I like that.
I like to think that all my creations, however I've created, that they're just putting a signal out into the world that, you know, you're not alone. I
Mhm.
believe in solidarity. I believe in community. I believe in acts of service. I believe all self-help should lead to helping other people. You know, the end goal should never be yourself. I think
Mhm.
you need to be able to fill yourself up and define your own voice, but you need to be able to take that. It's like finding something that you're good at, that you enjoy doing, that benefits other people, you
Yeah.
know, and it's kind of like it's the benefits because that's our nature. You know,
Mhm.
we live in a society and culture where we get overly individualistic with things, and we think the individual is the finish line. One, there is no finish line. There is no destination to life, but life is that group project that we need to be living together. And it's kind of like, so I still continue to emphasize the solidarity and the helping of others, but through this, you know, I have learned that I need to be aware of my own story. I need to be curious about my own story. And I
Mm,
need to be, because for the longest time, I had just not been tending to that part of the garden
mhm.
that I had been attending to was the other person. I was
Mhm.
attending to the visitors to my garden. I was intending to, myself and what was best ultimately for me. And I was very kind of imbalanced in that way. I wasn't worried about my compass, never even looked for my own compass. But it was through the creative acts, which were really just these manifestations of curiosity, that I could find my new reality and find things that I find to be intrinsically interesting, helpful. It gives purpose and meaning to my existence.
Yeah.
I know my existence is temporary, and I believe in memento mori, and all things remember death. It's a stoic, belief. But it's not to be sad. It's to be able to appreciate
Yeah.
this moment has preciousness to it. It's unique and it's special. I'm not going to have an infinite number of conversations with you. I only have a short amount of conversations. I only have this conversation with you. Maybe, I see you in
Mhm.
5 or 10 years, possibly, but
Mhm.
most likely this will be our only moment together to have this conversation. And that's what makes it special. That's what makes it unique.
Yeah.
And so that's why I consider it to be, kind of a blessing to have this moment to be able to share my story and to interact with this, conversation with you.
Talk to me a little bit about this is so cool. And I see where you are at when you're 50 years old, because you were born in the 70s, and now you're
1975,
yeah, and
NYC,
now
Manhattan.
you're
Absolutely.
working through life. But what kind of different identities have you had of who you are through those 50 years? Was there a time where you were um thinking about, well, are comparing yourself to others maybe, and trying to
Yes.
fit in with the crowd and all that kind of stuff? And I
Sure.
don't see that as now as like you're this
Mhm.
follower groupie, hanging out in Hollywood trying to see stars or whatever. But what I
I'm an
mean,
introvert. Yes.
yeah, who have you become over the years, and what does that evolution look like?
Well, I was always that scared child. I was that anxious child, and I'm 6'4", and I
Oh
was
wow.
tall from the get-go. I remember in 1st grade, I was just as tall as my teacher. My teacher was very, very small, okay? It wasn't that I was just giant in 1st grade. My teacher was small, but I was still tall, and so I stood out. It made it hard for me to be invisible, and I think, through the anxiety I became, this kind of caretaker. And I've always had like the caretaker archetype within me. That's always been my default setting. But I know now, I'm wise to the ways that it's probably I'm a caretaker because it's the people pleasing, and the people pleasing is a mechanism to maintain safety. Because
Mhm,
when you're feeling anxious, if it's a signal of danger. Anxiety is a signal of danger. Whether or not danger actually exists, that's one thing.
mhm,
But I was always an anxious person, and I enjoyed. I felt safe. I felt purposeful, kind of caretaking other people. Now I was good at basketball. For those that know, they know, Southern, Orange County,
mhm.
and but I would go play Northern Orange County,
Okay.
and I would get humbled real quick, and I would realize I need to study because this is I'm not that good, I'm just not that good. I'm good enough to kind of play,
Mhm,
and I played against some really good players, and they taught me that I need to develop other parts of who I am. And I was always kind of uncomfortable. I mean, I was, starting on my high school basketball team, sophomore year, and even though I was tall, my game was 3-point shooting. But I wasn't Ray Allen. It's kind of like, I wasn't him. Back in the day would have been more like Byron Scott, kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah.
um, you know, but I was a more clumsy Kurt Rambis in reality,
Okay, okay.
without the screens and without the rebounds, which made me pretty worthless. And so I go on to school, and I just want to help people. That's my mission, is to help people. And And that's the goal. That's the name of the game. Help people, and essentially, it's kind of like I always like the saying that like I'm much more shaman than surgeon. You know, I'm a storyteller. You know, that's what I am. I help people with their stories,
Mhm.
and I have my story. And but the problem is, I was a storyteller only telling other people's story, only working with other people's story, and I was not valuing, and I was not curious, and I was not tending to my own story. I wasn't trying to. I wasn't. It was just it didn't matter to me, and it didn't matter until everything shattered, and I realized I needed to formulate and have a relationship with all the parts of who I am, because I'm still anxious, you know, that doesn't go away. But I have a much better relationship with anxiety. I welcome it in, you know, it's kind of like I listen to it in ways that I never listened to it. I'm patient in ways I've never been patient with. I have a completely different, element of anxiety. I welcome it. I
Oh, good.
welcome the
Yeah.
anxiety. And so I treat it though, it's safe. It's safe to feel unsafe. And I'm not avoidant of those parts of me that feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I know that to expand is to work and allow that discomfort. It is to sit with it, to write it out, to express it, to sit here and to tell you, I know what shame feels like. I know what anxiety feels like. I know what depression feels like. I know the dark nights of the soul. I love Thomas More's book, Dark Nights of the Soul. And
Mhm.
so, I'll sit with it, because a lot of times in this world, we don't sit with that stuff. It's like we don't sit with it. I was about to curse, but it's like we don't sit with it. And so, because in this world, we've gotten rid of stillness. We've gotten rid of bored, no one's bored we can just scroll, we can play video games, the world is in your pocket. We don't have silence, and it's like we don't have what Thoreau had, which was a quiet forest, a pond that he could walk around. We yeah, are completely disconnected from what it is to be a human, and we don't allow ourselves these uncomfortable feelings. Oh yeah, I'll go for a walk, I'll to the gym. But you see anyone going for a walk, they've got their AirPods in. You see anyone at the gym, they got their AirPods in. They're not thinking and feeling and working through stuff. They just distract, and they stay with whatever society tells them is the socially appropriate way. We just remain domesticated. Again, I love the word domesticated because I'm a fan of Don Miguel Ruiz and his son. And so, you know what? When it comes down to it, we need silence. We need silence. And this is the hard part. We need silence to hurt. And through the hurt, we can expand, we can grow, and we can create opportunities. There
Yeah.
are
I
new
mean,
realities on the other side of pain.
yeah, absolutely. One of the things, like I do a devotional every morning. At least this year, I'm doing it where it's live and it's on.
Mhm.
And part of my time in there is I do breathing exercise, and we start out with that. I
Yes.
usually talk through the first one, and then there's a second one where I'm saying we need to be in stillness and clarity, and I go about 4 to 5 minutes where I literally, and it's just a little. I have some like classical type music that's playing in the background, really low. But it's amazing when you see, like, you can kind of see how many people are on your stream and are
Yeah.
watching, and how fast
It
that four
drops
minutes
off.
it drops, because people
Yeah.
are so uncomfortable in
Yes, they
silence.
are.
They are so
Absolutely.
like, I don't know what to do. I what am I got to go get scroll on somebody else's site and see what I can get into or do. I'm like, we just need to sit every day with
Yes.
clarity and silence. And
Mhm.
5 minutes, I mean, I do a few times a day,
Sure.
with my mindfulness stuff, but I just think 5 minutes a day is so disturbing for people. And if I
Yes.
went totally
Yes.
silent without even any, like, that binaural beats behind, that it's
Oh,
for
yeah.
calming.
Love it, love it, love it.
If I didn't have that on, I would even lose more people if it was just dead silence. And it's amazing so far. Like, I'm in the car these days, And as I'm driving, I don't turn anything on. I don't turn
Yeah.
in tapes for a while. I don't turn in, definitely not the radio. There's hardly anything on the radio
No,
that I can do at
nothing.
all. But and I'm a personal development guy that loves to listen to and try to develop myself. But lately, I just been trying to sit in silence, and what a great place that is when you get used to it, right?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's real simple. Someone once wrote a book that says there's no tiger. And so and everyone treats that silence as like they're waiting for the tiger to pounce. They're
Yes.
waiting for that bad thing to happen.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, but it's like you wait, it doesn't show up. I remember being a kid and walking into a dark room and feeling scared and then saying, like, come on, happen. Come on, come and get me. Come on,
Mhm.
come on, come on. And it's just like nothing, nothing,
No,
nothing, nothing, nothing. Why? Because there's no tiger.
there's no tiger.
A-
Oh my god.
and we treat that stillness as opening the door to the possibility of the tiger. And we
Mhm.
don't even want to welcome that possibility of the tiger. And I'm a huge fan of the idea. I always say, you know what? We're using all the crayons. We're using all the crayons. People, would come and say, I need to get rid of these negative thoughts. And I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. It's like you're going to have negative thoughts. That's a part of the human condition, but we need companions to that. We need to
Mhm.
be able to oscillate. We don't want to ruminate. We don't want to be stuck. We don't want to just think just because I have this thought, it's fact, it's truth, it's whatever. But you're allowed to have negative thoughts. You're
Of
allowed to be
course.
scared. You're allowed to be human. You're allowed to have all these different things. But they watch, it could be, some TV show and the host is happy and they're happy for the whole hour and they're excited for the whole hour. And then they get this conditioning going like, oh, I should be and it's been a while since I've watched TV. I don't watch TV. Like Kathy Lee Gifford, or I go back to like Entertainment Tonight and Mary Hart and stuff like that. But like whatever. Oh yeah, Mary Hart. Like when I was a young man, yes.
Mhm.
And so, but the idea of it is that, like, we see all these smiling, happy faces on TV, and it's like the Hunger Games. It's like, oh, you're not allowed to cry. So many people, oh my gosh, I don't want to cry anymore. It's like, oh, I want you to cry. Like, it's a great
Yeah.
stress. It is a gift from God to be able to cry, to be
Yes, it
able
is.
to relieve the stress. Our cortisol goes down, and it's just kind of like it's the teapot kettle just whistling. Let it whistle, let the stress out. But people don't want to feel bad. But I always think it's like Briar Rabbit, this children's book. It's like, you got to get through the briar patch. It's on the
Mhm.
other side of the tears, the anxiety. I promise you, it's not going to be a tiger. It's not going to eat you up.
It's
Peace
not.
is on the other side of pain. But they're like, I don't want the pain. And it's like, no, it's like, I want the pleasure. And so we get into these hedonistic distractions. And then we're wondering why it feels so empty at the end of the day. First day of Vegas, oh my gosh, they're so wonderful. Third day of Vegas, why is this purgatory?
Wow, get out of here.
I need to get out of here,
Yes.
and I need to go take a holy water shower,
Oh my
after
gosh.
this.
Yeah.
Because it's just a place of desire and it's a place of false hope. It's a place more than anything else. Then this is what I mean, because someone's like, well, I'm not going to Vegas this weekend. And it's like, it's a place of distraction.
Mhm.
And it is that stillness that, and again, if you and I just said, let's just be still together and just sit here for 5 minutes, people would drop out,
Oh yeah.
because they signed up for a distraction. They signed
Mhm.
up, to be able to get some wisdom, get some information, and like they want to get somewhere with it.
Yeah.
And like, trust me, I understand it. And why do I understand? Because I am human. I am
Mhm.
human. We are all human. There is not one thing that I have ever created in my entire life that came from a good day. If I
Yeah.
had a good day, then I was out living, and I was out with I'm a simple person. I would be taking walks, listening to music, I'd be driving to the beach, I would go get something to eat. There's
Mhm.
some beautiful places that I know where I can sit and, like, watch the bay, watch the boats, that's what I would be doing. I wouldn't be creating. Everything that I created was out of pain, everything.
Wow. Tell me then, as you say that, when you think of living boldly with purpose, and we're here on for this short amount of time,
Yes.
this little blip in time, and we
Mhm.
feel like we have purpose in our lives, or we create purpose in our lives. And
Yes.
what does that mean to you when you hear those words, or you think about why you're here, what you are here to accomplish?
So one of the things when and I'm feeling horrible, and I can feel horrible, and I can get desperate and anxious, I think I'm not the only one feeling this.
Mhm.
And I need to go do the scary thing. I'll tell you exactly what I was thinking last night. And what I was thinking last night, and again, I'm an anxious person. Public speaking has always been my greatest fear in the entire world. I would
Mhm.
rather go brush the teeth of a tiger than, do
That's
public
interesting.
speaking. And
Wow.
I was thinking, I need to get a speaking agent. I need to find a way to start speaking. I need to go find something. And I'll tell you, it's kind of like, it's like I've read a lot of books and I've done a lot of different things, but I've always been impressed with Tony Robbins.
Mhm.
And Tony Robbins isn't, there's no perfect person in the world. There's no one that has all the different answers. There's no one answer to anything, but I found benefit in, and I've always been impressed with his presence and how he shows up, and his ability. But one of the reasons, because it doesn't come naturally to me. It seems like that ability just to stand on stage and to command an audience and to be able to benefit people's lives. It's kind of like I've always been impressed with that, because we can be in our heads in a lot of different ways, but to go out and do that thing, and to answer your question, it's like if I'm hurting, I think, how can I be bold, and how can I do something that would be bold? And for me,
Mhm.
bold is getting out of my comfort zone,
Okay.
and for me, consistent with who I am, because if we're talking about the big five, those are the big five personality types. There's this conscientiousness, there's openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And so, it's like, for me, for it to feel right, it's not for the riches. It's not
Mhm.
to line pockets. That feels hollow to me. It really does. I'm not anti-money. I'm not anti-riches. I'm not anti any of those different things, because I give them away to other people. I give them away to my children. I give them away to, family. It's like I try to create opportunities for others. I don't need a new watch or a car or clothes or this or that. It's kind of like, but how can I be bold that scares the living, what out of me,
Mhm.
that gives me maybe the opportunity to change somebody else's life?
Oh, wow. That's good. I often ask folks, and I can ask you too, is it possible to live in purpose and I guess do why you believe you're here on this earth without serving others? Is it possible to have this purpose in life and carry that out without it involving other human beings and serving other human beings?
Well, one, I think the answer is yes. But you mentioned binaural beats. And I remember like way back when things were on CD, I bought a program. This is before the internet. And I'm 51, so yeah, I'm all of that. So, and I remember I was using a program from a company called Centerpoint, and
Okay.
they were fancy because point had an E at the end, because that's
Uh-oh.
when you knew, like, it's fancy. And, and I was driving. I still remember the moment so vividly. And I don't know how long the moment was, but I felt connected to everything around me. It
Mm,
was almost like this psychedelic experience. Reality looked like reality, but I did not feel separate from the world around me.
mhm,
And there was this crazy amount of, I feel connected to everything around me. And it was just like a glimpse. It was almost like a God wink. It's kind of
mhm.
like, it's one of those, you didn't come into nature, you're from nature.
From nature.
You're from here. You're made of stardust. Now, I also understand that trash is made from stardust too. I get that. It's all made from stardust. But but you are a part of nature.
Mhm.
And so when you say, well, could it get there without serving people? And I say, first thing is like, yes. And it's kind of like, but it can't be just serving yourself. You can
Yes.
serve the land, you can serve the environment, you can serve the animals, you can serve, all of God's creations, you can serve, but it can't be that you're the pinnacle.
I love that.
You're not the top of the pyramid, and it doesn't have to be for something, it doesn't have to be for another human being, but
It
it
could just be
cannot be for
the world.
yourself. I think or we or I, only grow through that sacrifice for something, and the answer is greater than myself.
I like
It
that. I love
needs
how
to
you said
be
that. Yeah.
it needs to be greater than myself. And so it's kind of like, it could be the slug that I see. I'm like, it's climbing up the house,
Wow.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
I know what's up there, and there's nothing that you need up there. Let me throw you back into the garden.
Yeah.
Let me clean up the trash on this path that I'm traveling. Let me take care of, all that has been created, all that has been created in here. So that's where I come from.
No, yeah, I love that. And I love that analogy because, we think that our relationships are mostly with human beings and not with nature. And I can see, I often use the example of a hermit, that is out there and saying, hey, I'm serving the world, I'm living in purpose. And I've talked to people who've said that before. Oh, I could just go be a hermit. I'm like, but you love people, so that isn't your purpose because you love people. Talk to me a little bit about relationships in your life that have mattered, and how that has helped you in your walk and your journey to become the person that you are today. Have there been certain people or associations, or have I know you've been in a lot of pain, and have people helped you through that pain, or have you had to pretty much figure this all out yourself?
You know what? It is a lot of, I found 2 good doctors,
Okay.
and unfortunately, I had to pay out of pocket for them because, if you want doctors to sit with you for a prolonged period of time and not to kind of just run in and out, and trust me, I wish, and I've tried, and I've found good doctors that take insurance, but these are the 2 best doctors that I found, and I've created relationships with them,
Hmm. Yeah.
where I can talk to them and they know me, and we can joke around, and it can be kind of human. And so it's human to human, and they have their expertise. But there is that contact where it wasn't just the prescription pad. And one is, Dr. Gupta, MG Allergy, and the other one is Dr. Shirley Wang at levelup.com. And those were two great women. And I don't think it's, by accident, that they're women. And Shirley Wang is Chinese, and Dr. Gupta is Indian. I don't think it's and here I am. I'm a white, cisgendered male, blah 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 blah. I got every privilege card in my pocket. Um, and it's kind of like, and and so what does that mean? Where am I going? It means that, like, we are all children under the same sun. We are all, and we have to be open to all people, all healers, all walks, every single person whatsoever. It's kind of like, I've seen, doctors that are, privileged and take themselves overly seriously. And I think, their journeys and their walks of life and whatever they went through, and how I don't know them personally in that respect at all whatsoever, but I have found tremendous, tremendous compassion. And I only mention this because I know people that, will see race as mattering in terms of the quality of what a healer could be in whatever modality that is.
Wow.
And I want to, kick that myth in the groin, to shatter it into a million pieces. It's kind of like, because that's something I truly don't believe in at all whatsoever. It doesn't align with any value that I have whatsoever. And so in terms of these relationships, I have found people who in some ways are not like me at all, and that's exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and so I think that's important, because human beings get tribal,
We do. We do.
and through that tribalness, that we can get blind, and we can become less than. I always tell people, see this white skin that I have, this white skin, it's about 6 or 7 thousand years old. That's how old white skin is. And what does that mean? It means that 99% of my ancestors did not have white skin.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
kind of like, and so it's kind of like, so that person over there that doesn't have, the skin color that mine, still my brother, still my sister.
Yeah.
It's still family, because we're all family, and life is so much better than when we see ourselves as all family. And I'm a huge believer in that. That's solidarity, not solidarity with melanin, solidarity with humanness, solidarity with souls. And that's what I truly believe in. And then the second part to your question is ultimately my children,
Mhm.
because it goes back to Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. You need to know your why.
Yeah.
He was a man that was in the concentration camps. He was a psychiatrist who came up with logotherapy, and he would see people when they lost their meaning,
Mhm.
their house or their university burnt down, they lost their family, that those people would deteriorate faster, all under the same horrible conditions. And so when something is difficult, you need to find your meaning.
Yeah.
And unknowingly to them, those kids have absolutely carried me through every single dark night.
Oh, great. How many kids do you have?
Two.
Two kids. All
Two.
right. Two
Yes.
wonderful kids.
Yes.
And are they adults now, or
Teenagers.
teenagers?
Yeah.
Okay.
So mentally they think they're 35.
Of
And
course.
so it's
Yeah.
kind of like,
They'll
yes.
drop back when they realize that they're not yet.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
they go
yes.
through the forest.
And they have the affordability of a 20-year-old, German sedan that, every part has to, cost 5 times as much, And so affordability not so great, but in terms of value to feeding the soul, the purpose, the identity, yeah, you can't go buy it. Doesn't exist. It's not on the shelf somewhere.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what amazing. I mean, I can imagine some of the conversations that you have. When you hear the word love, what does that mean to you when you hear the word love?
First thing that comes to mind is God is love. And I think of love as like the glue in terms of the connections to other people. And it is, the Greeks had, those different like love of the loins, love of the heart, love of the soul, kinds of things. And so there's different types of like the love. But, I speak more broadly to when I tell my friends that I love them, when I tell my daughters, that I love them, and that there's this connection to, again, I can love the sunset, can love the flowers,
Mhm.
and like that moment that I was talking about, earlier, when I felt so connected. It
Connected.
was one of the most beautiful feelings ever. It was one of the most safest, beautiful. It was like the world giving me a hug in that moment, and
Wow.
I have never experienced it ever again. 51 years, one
Mm.
time, but I'll never. It was that kind of moment, and the only thing that was different was the center point. And I didn't go. I bought the first level, and they send like they can sell like an endless amount of levels
Yeah.
and multi-level marketing and this and that and different kinds of things. I'm not speaking poorly about them, but it was just like the first set of CDs that I was listening to,
Oh, wow.
and so I think of love as that same thing of connection, and it gives us the availability to connect to those around us,
Yeah.
and should be much more of our baseline of how we treat, how I feel about some stranger,
Mhm.
is not going to be the same way of how I feel about my own daughters.
Of course.
But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that I can't love a stranger,
Of
you
course.
know and I think we need, and again, and that God is love and God is that connection, and through that it's like that invisible web. So I have seen recently on social media where like they have these different images of space, and using these different spectrums of light and whatnot, and they can see like
Mhm.
certain matter and certain connections and how certain things, because you look at space and it's like it's all black. But
Yeah.
remember, human beings can only see, if the spectrum of light goes from Los Angeles to New York, we can only see the amount of light the size of a peanut.
Yes.
And go look up, pigeons under UV light. Pigeons under the right light, they look like parrots. We think of pigeons as boring and gray and
Mhm.
dull and lifeless, but they are actually, if you have the right eyes and you can see the right light, they're actually like parrots. It's amazing. And so God is like that invisible, connection, just like you can see in like that universe in those pictures, that binds and ties us to all these different people. Because once we see the universality, and I think the structures of so much of society is to overemphasize us as individuals, that we're supposed to be like the Marlboro men, where it's
Mhm.
the American way, it's the Western way, is to be the strong individual. But I think that is so poisonous in many ways, because what it's doing is saying you don't need the tribe, you don't need to ask for help. You don't have to be a mentor, and you don't need a mentor yourself. You can do it all alone, and we cannot do it all alone. We
Mhm.
cannot. And we need to use love as a tool to be able to connect us to all of our people.
Oh, I love it. We've had. I've enjoyed this conversation so much, but as we begin to wind down, what haven't we talked about today, or that you would love to make sure that the audience here knows about or understands?
It's perfectly the best thing about, one of the best things that's underrated is not knowing and being uncomfortable.
Okay.
And when you can sit with a place, and this rhymes with something that we talked about in the very, very, very beginning.
Mhm.
And that's why you want to write, you want to journal, And you don't have to buy my expressive writing books. You don't have to buy anything. Get some blank paper, but write it by hand. If possible, if you have the physical ability to write it by hand, they've shown it works better if you write it by hand. Journal out your thoughts and feelings however they come. I'm a big fan of expressive writing, which is writing top of head, just like whatever's going on in that moment. But sit with it through the not knowing and sit with it through the discomfort. If you raise your hand and say, I will sit through the not knowing, I will sit through the discomfort, you will find things on the other side. That's where growth comes, and you will grow. And so it's kind of like, you're not stupid for not knowing, and you're not weak for feeling bad on an emotional basis. It's a human condition. We're all humans. But the other side is through discomfort.
Mm-hmm. It truly is. And people are not willing to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
They do everything they possibly can. In fact, they will not do stuff that will help them so they can stay in comfort. And that's so sad to me, because they won't push themselves. They won't grow. They just will hey, I can't go outside because a tiger might jump on me. But there's so many wonderful things outside, and you sit in your house, metaphorically, you sit in your house all day doing nothing at all, wishing life was better.
They would rather play Candy Crush than sit in 5 minutes of silence. And Candy Crush,
I know.
You will not be a better person. There's nothing there. It's empty calories. It's like you basically saying that, I'm just going to eat candy. It's emotional candy. And I'm telling you, you have to eat your emotional vegetables. But what's your intention in life? We're going to live in the future. You need an intention to move towards something that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why the value of us coming together, for us to come and stir. And we're just stirring the pot of people, the listeners. It's just getting them thinking. And the thing is, and it's kind of like, oh, I'm confused. It's kind of like, you know what? You're confused. Go talk to Dr. B. Make an appointment with Dr. B, because here's what it is. I'll tell you what it is real quick. It's kind of like, you like to help people. I like to help people. We can open the pantry door. I'll show you all the goods, in the pantry door. And you're like, you can have anything in that pantry. But people like you can teach people how to cook with those ingredients.
Yes.
You can teach people how to cook. Analogy. And so it's kind of like, make an appointment to see Dr. B. He's going to help you sort things out. He's going to teach you how to cook and make what you want to make out of life.
Yeah. Take the ingredients that you're pulling out of the pantry and let's make a masterpiece, or let's, make a cuisine that, that others would want to partake in. And that's
best grilled cheese ever. How do you make the best grilled cheese ever? It can be simple, but it can be beautiful. But it's the intention of what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, so good. Well, thank you for being on. Thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for just enlightening us with just tons of wisdom. I can tell how well read you are, and how that you have been searching for answers. And I also appreciate your vulnerability, that you're willing to say, hey, I've gone through some hard times. It hasn't all been easy, because sometimes you get on here and people give you their best life, right? It's that
the highlight reel.
People try, I can't be like that guy, because they compare themselves to the best life, not knowing all the things that somebody went through. And you were willing to share that with us today and spend time and say, wait a minute, no, there are days where I'm hurting all the time. And it's just my good day is just a better bad day. And there's so many people that are like where you're at and have been there and want better from it. They want to open the pantry. They want to cook the goods. They're just scared to it. And you've given some enlightenment on how to do that and how to do that in gray. So, as we get ready, we'll give one more final thought, and that you would have for our audience today, and then we will hopefully we can do this again, that we can get back on and we can talk some more, and
Whenever you
we can just
like,
have some
whenever
fun
you like,
together, because
hit
it's
me
been
up.
great. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I'm glad it was a good time for you. It was a good time for me, and I always tell people it's Robert Frost. He said, he's a famous poet. He's the one that wrote, like, like the two paths in the woods, and so he could say, and this is what his quote was, I could sum all of human existence into this one phrase, and it goes on. The story goes on. It's kind of like, you're going to have bad days. The sky is going to fall. The person's going to die. The person's going to get sick. The person's going to this. You're going to get into that fender bender. You're going to lose the job. The story goes on. The story goes on.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing today. For those of you who are watching, like I said before, hit subscribe, hit notifications. We have so many wonderful, incredible guests that come on that I would love for you. I would love to share them with you as I have Jeffrey today. I want you, don't forget that you're God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. Don't forget that you were born for greatness. I think there's greatness inside of you, and that greatness should not be covered up inside of a house and not getting out and not showing people your greatness. You should let it jump on other people, ooze on other people, be out there, but you got to get out there outside of your comfort zone to be able to do that. And Jeffrey talked about so eloquently today is you can't just live inside of a shell, because you are also an answer to somebody else's prayer. And being an answer to somebody's prayer, this means you be available for that to happen. And you got to be out there to be able to do that as well. So thank you again for a great show. I can't wait to see you guys on the next one. And you guys have an amazing, awesome, incredible, awestruck day today.